No rules when you come out my way. That's why my field stays packed on Fridays. We hunting, fishing, good living, just soaking up every country second we're giving. Yeah, we a long way away from the highway, so go ahead, y'all, you can get sideways. Smoking, sipping, dip spitting, just soaking up every country second you're giving.
It's the Old Boots Podcast with Justin and Laura, and our special guest today is Buddy Lovell. Hey, Buddy.
Hey.
What's up, Mr. Buddy?
Good to see you.
Glad to be here. Pretty day.
Oh, man, what a pretty day to have a podcast out by the pool in the backyard here.
It is super, super nice. So I'm not sure how long I've known Buddy.
37 years.
37 years.
Buddy knew.
It's been etched in his memory. But Buddy is a audiovisual specialist and has done some other things in his life, but worked with a lot of different artists and stars throughout the years. But I think we want to start with really where it all started for you, Buddy, because you're a local guy.
I'm a local guy. I actually grew up in Sandersville early years and was the I guess the high school nerd that dealt with the microphone for the little meetings that the school would have, bring all the students in the gymnasium. And luckily I got picked to do that, which got me out of class 15 minutes early before the meeting. And I got to go to class 15 minutes late after the meeting, which really took about 2 minutes to put that microphone up. But I figured out how to
stretch it out
and get about a 30-minute break during the day there and doing something I liked.
So you actually started with the audio stuff early in your
correct
probably high school or
7th, 8th grade.
Oh,
did the lights for a junior senior prom in the 7th grade at Brentwood High School. Thank the Lord we had Ace Hardware that I could pick up the colored floodlights and put them on a light switch and change the colors on the stage for the one-act play in the junior senior prom. So that was kind of a pinnacle for me, going, oh my Lord, look at what these lights will do.
So did you know how to do that, or is that something did you read an instruction manual, or did you just know how to hook up lights and stuff?
I just figured out how to hook up microphones, run them through a speaker, hook up lights. If you had 2 or 3 lights, different colors, put them each on a switch so you could cut them on and off. It was just figuring stuff out, just experimenting and playing around.
Just having fun, not knowing that would lead to what you do for a living.
Career. Never in a million years would have thought that would lead to a career. I mean, that wasn't a mindset back then because, you're young and everything's fun and exciting.
I think it's always fun and exciting with Buddy, actually, Justin.
Every time I've ever been around him, he's always got some cool stuff to say and, some cool sayings that he says. So you got to listen in on it. You got to catch up.
Got to catch one of those.
Got to be on your toes around him. You know what I mean?
So you graduated from?
Actually moved over to Washington County High School, graduated there, came to Macon and went to work at Southern Aggregate on Light and Tie Road, working in the rock industry.
Okay.
Still piddling, trying to buy speakers and microphones and lights and stuff on a very limited budget, of course, and doing that on the side, working Monday through Friday at the chalk plant. Friday night and Saturday night, I'm in some nightclub setting up for a band or somewhere doing sound for them.
Right.
Making extra money and, enjoying what I did.
So the rock quarry life, how was that?
That was interesting. Sitting in a 8x8 box room with a rock shaker, shaking rock for 8 hours a day, trying to figure out the measurements of the stone that was in the mix that was made in the rock quarry. So as I would sit there and shake rock, I kept thinking to myself, it's got to get a little better than this in life. I don't know that I want to be stuck in this 8x8 box shaking rocks.
Somebody's got to shake rock, but you don't want to be that guy. Huh?
I didn't want to be that guy. I did it for 2 or 3 years and got lucky enough to get, there was a DJ in Macon at the time, Jimmy Vaughn. I don't know if you remember that name, Jimmy Vaughn, or not, but Jimmy had a connection with a guy named John Keller at Housing and Urban Development in Washington, D.C. And Jimmy ponied up, hey, I got a guy that's got some sound equipment. We can work on some of your rallies for this up-and-coming political guy, Dan Quayle.
Okay.
So we started out running around on the East Coast doing the Dan Quayle rallies, which led into the Bush rallies, which led into the Reagan rallies. We did 3 or 4 of the Reagan rallies.
Right. Okay.
So that was a pretty interesting time to be able to do that.
Right. I mean,
And you kind of traveled all over doing that,
All
right?
over the country. Yeah, I went all the way to California, Brunswick, Maine, out in Washington. We went all over. Basically, had a Ryder truck full of sound and lighting equipment, and they would give us a schedule for us to basically set up everywhere we could that they were moving campaigning. Of course, we couldn't make all the spots because they're moving on planes, but we're in a truck, and they'd give us 3 or 4 a week, and we'd go set up, tear it down, load up, go to the next city, all over the country. They would just route us wherever they were going, basically.
And did you have to work with the FBI and the Secret Service?
Actually,
and-
Secret Service, we got in pretty good with those guys and befriended them as much as you possibly can. A Secret Service agent, they're not really going to be too friendly with anybody, but the recognition of seeing us on so many rallies, we did form at least a basic relationship with them.
oh yeah.
So
That's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool start. So what happened after that? After the person got elected
after the person got elected,
or didn't get elected?
after the person got elected, Bush Sr. got elected, and you come home and you got what you think is a pot of gold that you can run out of real quick if you're not careful. So
Oh yeah. No matter how much you make, if you spend it fast enough.
So I found out real quick that you can spend some money and re-spend some money, and before you know it, you've outspent what you've spent.
Absolutely.
And so I basically started working at the Yellow Rose nightclub, running sound, and also working another day job in the kaolin industry down in McIntyre. So the kaolin industry was a real job, so to speak. And the nightclub was just extra money to, live on and have fun with.
The Yellow Rose, now that came up in the last podcast. Where's the Yellow Rose at? 'Cause-
Riverside Drive.
Okay.
It's a church now.
It's a church now.
It's behind Good to Go.
Good to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was Nashville South and all those different things.
Well, I think it was the Yellow Rose, first.
Okay.
Then Nashville
then
South.
Nashville South.
Gotcha. Okay.
And met a lot of artists through that.
Right.
Because they would bring in quarterly at least they would bring in, a B or C Johnny paycheck. And never forget when they said, hey, we got this young kid from Macon's going to play Jason Aldean. You ever heard of him? I'm like, yeah, I know Jason. Jason has done shows for WDEN in the Georgia National Fair. Jason was just up and coming and getting going. He did a lot of shows with the radio station.
He did.
A lot of stuff for the radio station. And so, there was that segued into more shows that became available for me to do with the radio station starting to do street parties and stuff like that. And it just kind of evolved from there.
Do you remember when Clint Black came to the Yellow Rose?
I remember Clint Black coming to the Yellow Rose.
Yeah, that was his first single that came out, and he played the Yellow Rose, and everybody's really excited. I think that's the last time he came to Macon.
That was probably the last
the
time.
one and only time
Yeah.
that we got to see
Now,
him
Blackwell
in
brought him
Macon.
in about 6 or 8 years ago at the auditorium.
Oh, okay.
That's right. So I'll tell you, the funniest thing to me is Laura had, with the radio station, they were sponsoring the stage, and they had the Dixie Chicks. And we're setting up that night and early that morning, and this little teenager walks up in a pair of overalls and high-top Converse tennis shoes, and she said, do y'all have any idea where the country stage is? And I said, it's right here. She said, okay, I was just wondering. She walked off. Well, That was actually Natalie Maines, the lead singer.
Lead singer.
They were staying at the Crown Plaza, and she basically just walked down to Cherry Street and was checking stages to see where they were going to perform.
I've heard about the Dixie Chicks. When Laura was booking them back in those days, and she booked them when nobody knew who the Dixie Chicks were, and they blew up so fast.
That's correct.
They were playing for practically chump change once the street party got here.
Yeah, we booked them earlier in the fall for $7,500.
Yep.
And then their first song went to #1, and they became huge overnight. I mean, truly overnight. And by the time they made it to the street party in March, they were getting $50,000 a night. But they honored the contract.
That's admirable right there.
I remember their manager Simon that came up, and he was like, we had a commitment, so we're building a career. We've got to honor our commitments, because I think the talk back then was like you said. It's like I think they even had some $100,000 dates at that point.
They might have.
They were on up there, and Simon's like, we committed to this, so we're going to do this, and they did it. What a fun night,
And they did it. So what an artist, when they're coming to do a show, they send you their technical needs, a technical rider.
That's correct.
What's on that rider?
So that rider basically just gives you a choice of manufacturers of speakers that they prefer, how many microphones they need, what type of mixing consoles they need, what type of lighting they need, and how they want everything set up. So it's basically a roadmap. So when they get there, we've got everything set up. They can come in with their engineers and perform their show and go away.
Right. And so, you're a turnkey service. When you show up, you go in there, you set up, from the stage to sound to everything. When I go to a show, and I know when my friends go to a show, I'm just as astonished and amazed by the production of it as I am who's about to play.
Right.
I'm looking at like, man, this took a lot to happen. And anytime you're in a show in Middle Georgia, now we know who made it happen.
Most of the time, we're involved in it to a certain extent.
Right.
You were talking about what kind of got it going. I'll never remember. I was 14 years old.
Right.
And I went to the Bell Auditorium in Augusta, Georgia. And there was what they used to call back in the day a 3-package show. There was Billy Joe Spears, had a song called Blanket on the Ground, Tom Paul and the Glacier Brothers, and the headliner was Conway Twitty.
Uh-huh.
And I will never forget, as long as I live, the lights going dark, this spotlight going to the right of the stage, and all you could see was this finger up in the air, and this guy says, "Hello, darling," and the place erupted. I mean, at 14, to see undergarments being thrown on the stage was, I'm like, this is cool. This entertainment thing is kind of cool. And I was intrigued with the lights and all that kind of stuff as well. So that might have been building on the underlying side of what was going on.
So you started buying more and more equipment.
Let me tell you something. I'd really not need to, but I'd buy a microphone that was $50. Didn't have the cable for it yet, but I had the microphone.
Right.
Then I'd buy the cable. Then I'd get a little 4-channel mixer, then a 6-channel mixer. It was just over and over. I'd buy this. And, you're compiling all of this equipment. Eventually, we're like, gosh, I can do a 3-piece band.
Right.
This is really cool, And so it built from there, just starting out real small. And the affiliation with the local radio station, DEN, really helped because they started to do a lot.
Right.
And we did, what was the concert we did that Lee Durant had? We do it at the auditorium every year.
The Penny Pitch concert.
Penny Pitch concert. Mm-hmm. I got involved with that one, and I think the first one, Razzie Bailey from Macon, Georgia. Razzie was always the headliner. But I got involved in that one year, and there was Razzie Bailey and, gosh, I'm trying to think of, there was a guy named Tom Carlisle that used to be a singer. I don't know if you remember Tom Carlisle.
Mm-hmm. Vaguely.
And Larry G. Hudson, old Macon, Georgia guy. So that was the first one I did, and that was really cool to be able to set up a sound system and these guys get in there. And we were making money for the charity
For the penny pitch for the Make and Rescue mission.
Make and Rescue mission.
Wow.
So that was a real fun concert to do over the years. We did that several years before it kind of went away.
And so now you've done all these concerts and you're building your business. And then before I know it, Buddy's going all over the country, setting up sound. And tell us some of the...
Well, I tell you what, one thing, one of the first trips that got us going, which blew me away, is Shenandoah played at the City Auditorium.
Okay.
And they're like, we got a big problem tomorrow in Tupelo, Mississippi. I was talking to the road manager. He said, our production company has bailed on us. Is there any way you could get to Tupelo overnight and set up for us on this flatbed trailer? And I'm like, heck yeah.
Heck yeah, let's go.
So I forget how many hours it is, but we drive, sleepless night to get there the next morning to set up so Shenandoah can have a show. And we're in the stadium where Elvis did his first concert in Tupelo, Mississippi.
Wow.
We're on second base with 2 flatbed trailers pulled up as the stage, and we're playing towards the home plate. And I'm just going,
this is really happening.
This is really happening. And then it just kept happening.
Right.
And working with bands. We did a stint with Sally Jesse Raphael came to Macon.
I remember that.
And she took us to California. We did several weeks with Sally Jesse Raphael in California at SeaWorld. And her executive producer, Bert Dubrow, finds this guy that does commentary in Cincinnati, Ohio, named Jerry Springer, and says, hey, let's do some Jerry Springer shows.
Okay.
So we take off and do 6 or 8 Jerry Springer shows out of the studio. He was based in New York as well.
Right.
And we're all over the country doing those Jerry Springer shows. And while that was way fun, that was super entertaining. It's a little bit different environment than a band up there singing their hit records.
Right.
But it was all part of, building the company and that kind of stuff. So
if they had the money, you had the time.
I had the time, and we would thank heavens for Ryder Truck Rental. The Riders used to be yellow back then.
Right. I remember.
We grab them from Bruce Paul's Ryder Place on Gray Highway, and here we go.
Right. That is awesome. So so that was some of your first big gigs that you would go do is like Shenandoah. And so did you ever have any kind of artist that kind of was like, hey, I want Buddy to go do our entire tour, let him take care of that? Did you ever travel along with him during the tour?
We never got into touring because, to be quite honest with you, I wasn't smart enough back then to understand all the expenses involved in logistics. I could go do 1 or 2 here or there and have no issues, but
right.
I never really, even to this day, have not gotten into the touring aspect of it.
Right. Well, just life on the road in general. I mean, so you could, like you said, go to Tupelo and it was cool, but I mean, taking your crew on the road and the cost of being on the road is triple what it is to do it down in Dublin or something.
When you figure hotel expenses, food per diem, and all that stuff, it's very expensive, even for the entertainers. These entertainers, you think they make a ton of money. Well, if you look at how much it costs them to be out.
Oh yeah.
It was, I can remember we had the flood relief concert down in Perry, Georgia. Mm-hmm. And we've set up for that thing, and here comes this old beat up bus with this little kid driving it.
Little van.
Huh?
Little van.
It was a little bit bigger than a van, but it looked like a van. But it was a bus, a little kid driving it, and he pops out. It's Kenny Chesney,
right?
and we're going, what do you? He had played the street party.
He had played the street party, and we asked him to come down and open for Trisha at the flood relief concert, which she donated her time, and he donated his time as well. And so we didn't pay any. We paid the band, I think, but the performers themselves, they donated their time to raise money for the American Red Cross.
That's great.
And somebody had like gotten sick or something, and you called him on like a Thursday or Friday, and he came down on
for the street party.
Okay, that's
party,
what that was, the street party.
I went to Doug Grimm and said, Mr. Grimm, I got an idea. Can we put the company van out there and put a crane over it and pick it up in there at the street party? and we'll shine the spotlights up there on it.
Right.
And I think he and you and Jerry Marshall, y'all were kind of cool with that. But then we said, let's put Kenny
In the
in the van, let him up in the air, give him a wireless microphone,
Right.
and as he's singing one of his songs, we would let him down. So we are thinking that this is going to be the coolest, and it kind of still is the coolest street party ever.
Right.
But lo and behold, my crane vendor goes to the other radio station in town and says, hey, we're doing this van up in the air for the street party to make it look good. And how'd y'all like to do that?
Right.
Of course, we didn't know anything about that. So that morning, they've got Joe Diffie on their stage, and we've got Kenny Chesney and maybe Lone Star or somebody else. I can't really remember. But, you know, here goes this van up in there over across the way from us, a Green Jacket parking lot where we used to be. And I was stunned. And so we said, I think that's at the point where we had to back and punt and go, well, hey, they've got just their van in the air.
we're going to put our singer.
Can we put our singer in the air?
Me and you would have been dangerous if I would have grown up with you.
Oh,
buddy.
yeah.
Yeah, you two together.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So and Kenny was just as eager as he could be to do it. You remember, he's like, heck yeah, let's do it. So we put him up in there, and you know, that crane's letting him down real slow, and he's just singing away, and people are loving it. We got the spotlights up there on him, and I think that's probably one of the most unusual and funnest things I've done.
Oh yeah, I mean, you
know.
think about it now.
Yeah.
The artist management, they won't even let them climb a ladder,
Right.
a step ladder anymore, much less go 100 foot in the air in a crane.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy because, you know, Kenny played the fair several years later in Perry, and I know we were trying to get him or his manager was trying to get him to come in and do sound check, and I think he said he was on a Madden football game or something.
Yeah.
on his TV. He's like, it's gonna be a few more minutes. He's doing it. You know, he's doing his.
He's on 3rd and 10 right now.
He's on 3rd and 10. So, and of course, everybody waited on him. But it was good to see him, and I talked to him, and of course, he remembered that. He was. Yeah,
that is awesome.
You know, so the only other funny story about bringing up the Perry and the fairs down there is we have Luke Bryan one year, and Luke's there early, and he gets a phone call. He's backstage hanging out with us in catering. He gets a phone call from his wife, and she is lost in one of the back parking lots at the Perry Fairgrounds.
Right.
So I'm standing there with Bob, and Luke comes up and says, is there anything we can do to go out there and get Caroline? She's lost. She's parked, but she's lost. So Bob said, run him out there. So thank the Lord, I was fortunate enough to have a nice little sports car at the time.
Right.
So me and Luke jumped in the sports car, and we drive out, and we go back around, and we get up to Caroline, and she's in a Ford Explorer with the kids were real young back in. And she follows us in and everything. But Luke, you know, he made the comment, oh, it's a nice car. I said, you ought to get you one. He said, I don't think my wife will let me get something like this. So, you know, I mean, these entertainers, they're just like
They're real folks.
They're real folks, yeah. We probably the one that seemed more distant than anybody would, and nice guy, but just distant, was probably Kenny Rogers. We did a bunch of shows with Kenny, and you know, he wasn't quite as humble, but he was still a great entertainer and a good guy to work with.
I've watched a lot of documentaries on him, and I think that his management and the people around him sat him up on a pedestal from the very get-go.
Right.
He didn't have a lot of the hard knocks. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that might have been that might have rubbed off on him.
Well, it was kind of weird because when we had him in Daytona, he had a limp, and I guess he had knee surgery or something like that, and I said, Kenny, okay? And they're like, yeah, he's fine. I just had never seen him with a limp in his leg. They said, yeah, he was supposed to go to rehab and decided he'd do shows instead. And now,
right,
he had that limp because he didn't follow those.
Because he didn't follow the doctor's instructions.
Doctor's orders. He was out doing shows.
Do you remember folks that you remember that you've worked with over the years? Some of the people that you thought were the really nicest?
Alabama. And I talked to them in the hotel, but there was a Trombo radio tour going on of 3 people gosh, I don't remember what year it was, but it was a guy named John Brannon, Toby Keith, and Shania Twain.
Mm-hmm.
They were running around on a bus doing radio station promos, I guess, and got to talk to Toby in the lobby there at the Crown Plaza. Didn't get to talk to Shania, even though I would have loved to have. And John Brannon, I don't think he ever took off like those two did. But Toby was a great guy, and we saw Toby several years later at the Perry Fair.
Oh,
and I reminded him of that. He said, yeah, we did a lot of, I guess they were running around the country trying to get a little trombone package of a RCA or MCA records or something like that. Had them out doing.
Yeah, doing a radio tour.
Yeah, doing a radio tour.
Visiting radio stations.
Yeah.
And it's funny, Buddy, talking about Toby Keith, and Renee is here. So that night of the Georgia National Fair in Perry, when Toby was playing, we went down to Perry and we did the fair. And then we came back to the Texas Cattle Company in Warner Robins. They had a location in Warner Robins.
That's right.
And Mark opened the restaurant for us. The restaurant was closed, but he opened the bar, and we were all in there, people from the radio station and Toby and his crew and all that kind of thing. And all I know how the night ended was that Toby was on the bar, standing on the bar, singing and dancing and throwing back a few, right? And his manager said, "We have got to go." And he said, "Well, I'm going to ride back with these girls." Whoever those girls were, I don't know who they were. It wasn't me.
Right.
Because I was going the other direction. He needed to go back to Perry, and I needed to go back to Macon.
Right.
And his manager said, "Well, you're not riding back with those girls because we're going back and getting on the bus." But I just remember he was just hanging out, having the best time.
Right.
I mean, just being a super cool guy, just hanging out with us, you know.
Oh yeah.
They got there that morning and in Perry, and you know, he and his right hand guy, I forget what his name was, but they're running the stairs for exercise.
Right.
So I guess so they could party hard that night.
Maybe.
That's the same way with Miranda Lambert. We've done her a couple times, and she comes into catering that morning with a couple little dogs, and looked like she just woke up. Well, at showtime, it's like a total transformation of, goodness gracious.
They flip a switch and it's on.
Flip a switch, and it's
That's
on.
why they make the big bucks.
That's why they make the big bucks. Yeah.
You've done a lot of private events for some pretty cool folks in Atlanta, too.
Done a lot of private. Yeah, did Evander Holyfield's 4th of July party several years in his front yard, which was a host of Hollywood celebrities and sports stars that would come in, and basically he would just have a party, have some local DJs playing in a band, and out in his front yard of his field in Alpharetta, Georgia, which used to be Burt Reynolds' property as well, which was kind of cool. Burt's house was still up
Very
front
cool.
there, and he had the big mansion. And yeah, so there's been several of those occasions. You know, probably did a few small things with Usher.
Oh, just a few small things with Usher.
You know, just like some studio stuff.
Peace up, A-Town.
Yeah.
Usher.
So
Now, see, I wish I'd known that. I would have gone with you to meet Usher.
Oh, absolutely. I think I'm almost positive about this, but TJ, my best friend TJ, his cousin is Usher's yard man. He cuts Usher's grass, and you know, so it's always cool to know Usher.
Oh yeah. Well, when he's in Atlanta.
There you go. That's exactly right. So,
Any other big celebrities that you remember working with that were just, you thought cool people?
Again, I touched base on Alabama. And the craziest thing about that at the time, there was a local DJ named Lee Durant that was the morning DJ for WDN at the time. And I was over at the station for some reason, either picking up a check or planning a show or something. And he said, "Hey, let's go across the street just a minute. I'm going to have breakfast with these guys." They had a buffet there at the Crown Plaza. And we sit down, and, you know, there's Teddy Gentry and Randy Owens, and Mark was there. I don't think Jeff Cook came down, but we're sitting there having breakfast with Alabama, who had a show coming up at the Coliseum that night. And just the nicest guys. Ended up seeing them several years later in Perry. They played the Perry Fair, and just as humble as they could all be.
That is awesome.
So if somebody called you today, will you take a small job as well as a big job?
We do. We try to.
You just work anywhere, anytime?
We work anywhere, anytime. We try to just stay on the go and stay busy. We have a couple of corporate clients that take us all over the country, and that's probably 3 to 4 weeks a year, and it's annual thing that we've been involved in for 25 years probably, that we go around and work with these RV groups and the division of the CDC out of Atlanta, Center for Disease Control, a lot of corporate stuff on that side with meetings. So
Right.
But we'll take a microphone at the nursing home to play bingo or the concert for 25,000 people.
Oh yeah, I mean this past weekend we had the thing in Gray there, and our big thing was going to be the Michael Jackson impersonator, and I'd
Yes.
look up and there's Buddy's boys setting up the stage right in the middle of the road. So you'll set it up for 500 people or 50,000 people,
That
right?
doesn't really matter. We're always about doing the show.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So right now, how many? I guess if you've got multiple shows going on, how many shows can you handle at one time? Like if you got a bunch of things going on a Friday night, can you do 2 or 3 huge gigs?
We can handle 2 or 3 pretty good size shows, maybe Coliseum size shows.
Right. Okay.
No issues there. I've got a great assistant in Rhonda Cook that's been with me for 27 years, and I can deploy her out to take care of some corporate stuff while I'm doing the musical side of it. And we have been spread really, really thin in the past, and it's sleepless nights, but we just keep going through it.
Well, and I'm sure that the business is just like anything else. It's hugely relationships, number one, but number 2, customer service. So they know if Buddy says he's going to be here at 12:05, Buddy's pulling in there at 12:05, and he might charge you for it, but he's going to be there, and you don't have to worry about it. That's something you can check off your list, and you can't do that with many services anymore. People tell you they're going to be here to do this at a certain time. They might be that same time next week getting somewhere, and I'm sure it's like that in your business. You probably compete against some people and maybe even lose some bids against some people that are not going to do that customer well.
Right. Well, I got to tell you, my relationship with most of my customers has a pretty good bit of longevity to it. We've been with them, Cherry Blossom, 25 years. As again, I said, one of the divisions of the CDC, 27 years. RV industry, probably 30 years. Perry Fair, 28 years. We've developed a relationship. It's more than just a business relationship. And like you say, they have to be able to depend on you and meet their needs, because they're as the Perry Fair. They're hiring these entertainers that say, hey, we need a Motif XF8 and a Motif XF6 keyboard, which the fairground goes, what's that? Well,
What is that?
Yeah, that's
I got a good dose of that.
yeah.
I got a good dose of that about a year ago, and I went to hire Sammy Kershaw for a local show here in Gray, and they sent this list of stuff, and I was like, whoo, this is Chinese, Laura. I don't know what I'm looking at here.
Yeah.
I want Sammy downtown, but I don't know what this thing says, what it means.
Some of those,
and I'm sure his list is very simple compared to some people's.
It's very simple compared to some of them,
right?
And you find a lot of times, they it's called a wish list. I can remember years ago when the radio station was doing the concerts at the Centroplex or Coliseum, it was called back then. Steve Warner and the Only Green M&Ms, I think, or something like that. It was something really, really out in left field. And of course, they get there and they'll eat the green ones, the red ones, the black ones, and the brown ones. They didn't really.
I've watched a couple of shows and they talk about doing something crazy like that, and they can tell if the person read the rider when they walk in the room. They didn't care what color the M&Ms was, but they knew if they walked in, there was nothing but yellow M&Ms or whatever that stupid thing they asked for. They were like, okay, these people are ready. We're ready for the show tonight.
Yeah. They know when they come in. In some way on our end, if we've got production set and ready to go, it's actually a smoother day for everybody involved. It's when you have advanced with a person, and that person a week ago's no longer with the artist,
right?
And then you're you're kind of we've said it per our instructions. You're kind of in a tennis match. Say, well, we need this change. And on site, it's a little bit of a cumbersome situation.
Right. Oh, I can imagine. Yeah.
You see this gray hair I have? Buddy gave me about 100 of these.
Oh, yeah.
Because in the early days when we would do the street party and stuff, and that was my job, was to, book the talent and then make sure that the food rider and all that was filled like it was supposed to. And I would type up these schedules of what was going to happen when.
Right.
Like the bus is going to get here at 8. We're going to have breakfast at 10. We're going to do this, this, and this. And invariably, nothing went like it was supposed to on time. And the other thing is that Buddy would never have my banners hung when he was supposed to.
And the reason for that was?
I don't know why you never had them hung when you were supposed to.
Quite honestly, back then, we were setting up 14 foot of scaffolding. And my main concern always
was the sound.
Sound, but the wind. Mm-hmm. And when you put a banner up on a 14-foot high scaffolding,
right,
you weight it down and you do all that stuff. But I was the one that always waited until the last minute before the gates opened
then
to reduce my liability of that guy being blown over.
Right.
And all I knew is that Buddy didn't have the banners hung up. And the sponsors needed their banners up.
Yeah. And we would go from hanging those banners out 7 by 5 foot, 7 wide, 5 foot tall, vinyl banners with no wind cuts in them.
Oh, yeah.
Wire tying them on each side of that scaffolding, just making a sail. So
oh, yeah.
I got real nifty and said, well, I'll fix this. I'm just not going to put wire ties at the bottom of the banner.
Let them flap.
So we've got the banners hanging, and then Laura's coming. They're flapping in the wind. They're flapping. People can't see them when they're flapping. And it was just an ongoing saga, every street party about those dadgum banners.
About those banners.
About those banners.
But I do understand a little bit more as we've gone through so many different things together. I understand a little bit more about how those things work, but I will tell you that Buddy put a few gray hairs on my head for sure. For sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, when you go to looking at the cost of doing something like a show,
yeah,
and you look at, I think who's making the money nowadays is Ticketmaster. I think they're making more money than probably even the artist, but that's a story for a different show.
Yeah.
But when you look at something and you're going, okay, the artist says they need $100,000 to play this, and let's just call it Luke Bryan's farm tour when he came to Macon and he needed that big thing. You probably set that up, right?
We did the labor for that.
Right.
Yeah.
So that a stage like he is on and all the stuff that's hooked up to it, $1 million?
To purchase it?
Yeah, to purchase it and all the stuff that's on it.
Easy.
And so that rental on $1 million piece of equipment is astronomical. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you got you got to rent the park. You got you probably 300 or 400 extra security officers that need. So, that little $30 ticket that everybody bought to come in there, Luke Bryan might not have made but $3 of it. You know what I mean? By the time it all gets to him, and a lot of people just don't take that kind of stuff in consideration. When you look at that whole production, the artist sometimes gets a very, very small portion of it. So they got to stay on the road. When it's road time, they go hit the road for 100, 150 days at the time.
Right. I ran with Willie Nelson for probably 2 or 3 years in the Southeast doing lights with him. And back when his drummer Paul English was his road manager. And we were doing different dates with him. And, the number, probably 50 or 60,000 a night back then. Mm-hmm. Casinos would always pay more, but I'll never forget one of his band members saying that when Ray Price died and Merle Haggard died, Willie's management said, "You're one of the last few. We're going up,
right,
on cost to be able to perform, because that genre of music, people still wanted it, but there just wasn't that many people left to perform it with Merle dying and Ray Price dying,
right,
and." So his, he significantly went up, and I think he really significantly has gone up lately with going through the COVID and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Seems like a lot of the entertainers, and I may be wrong on this, but it seems like a lot of the entertainers during COVID lost their normal way of life and income.
Right.
So now it's almost like on the backside, you're playing catch up.
Yep.
And your numbers are
Playing catch up and, relying on social media streams, relying on different avenues of revenue, whereas I guess it had began to be, hitting the road was where the money's at.
right.
Now hitting the road, I mean, you go to certain cities, you got 300 union workers that cost $100 an hour to get out there and hang out in the parking lot, and by the time they do all that and cover all that stuff,
It's
they might as well have made a YouTube video.
and most of the venues when they sell merchandise, the venue gets a cut of that merchandise.
I have just recently heard about that.
Yeah.
One of my friends, regularly his hoodie would be $35, but now he goes to certain places and he has to match what everybody sells them for, and he has to give that rest of that to the venue. Yeah, that's crazy. So the venue gets $20 or $25, and I mean they're making more than the artist is on the merch. So
I remember talking about that merch. One of the biggest ones was the Jonas Brothers. We had them in Perry, and gosh, I want to say they did $70,000 or $80,000 in T-shirts because they were just hot off of the Hannah Montana TV show.
oh yeah,
Same deal like Laura's situation. The fair booked them before they became anything.
they got a swell deal.
They got a swell deal, $15,000 I think it was, and those guys that no telling what they were going for, and they came in, and I'll never forget Bob Irwin saying, "We have never in all these years sold as many T-shirts, caps, pins,
Oh yeah,
and hoodies as the Jonas Brothers did," which was, of course, the fairgrounds loved it because they got a nice,
Got a percentage.
They got a percentage. So
that is awesome.
yeah,
COVID was not good to your business. It wasn't good to any entertainer business.
COVID was not good to the entertainment industry in general. All of the blessings that I had accomplished with the equipment, trucks, a warehouse. I'd go in with my secretary. Of course, we worked through COVID, and the biggest decision that we had to make was what's for lunch. And of course, 9 out of 10 times it was, well, just run up here to Cattle Company on Houston Avenue and get you some lunch
Right.
to go. And then they opened up and we could go eat. But it was surreal to open my warehouse door from my office and see everything just sit.
All in one spot.
And it just kept sitting. And it kept sitting. And it kept sitting. And what was it? 10 or 12 months. We did a few movie outdoor things
Right.
where we would set up a video wall and show movies outdoors. But for the most part, my business dropped down in 1 year to 5%.
Wow.
And it happened from the 20th of February to March 31st. It just went. And I'd go cut the lights on and look out there and cut them off.
Yeah.
Get the truck keys and go out there and crank the trucks up once a week, cut them right back off. It was very surreal to see how it affected my career, which I had built and was really proud of.
Right.
And never in a million years would have thought, hey, we're not doing this. Hey, we're not doing this. Hey, we're not doing this. And I mean, even some of the annual things that I had that was long-term, several-year relationship with, the events just couldn't go.
Right.
So that was a wake-up moment.
Oh, I can.
So and what it's done is it's made me appreciate more now the telephone call for a microphone or a small setup at Cherry Blossom as opposed to a big concert setup at the amphitheater.
Right.
I developed more of appreciation for all of it as opposed just to the larger events.
Perspective got a little bit better.
It got a lot better. Really fast, too.
Right. And then when people wanted to start back renting those types of things and getting your services, they wanted a little less package for the next year or two. Like if they were originally going to be a 50,000 venue, they would only sell 25,000.
Correct.
So they needed half the sound
That's
and half
correct.
the stage and half everything.
Right.
So you had to probably a lot longer than any other kind of business easing back into full swing.
We had to ease slowly, show by show. Thank the Lord, it probably took a solid year, to get back to where we were the previous year prior to COVID. But it was a slow step process. But again, it made us appreciate somebody needing 2 microphones and a speaker,
Absolutely,
or a TV.
I think that's one thing I wanted to mention too, because not only did everybody go through that slow time and then you came back, but then when you came back, everything was more expensive, right? And I know you and I have talked about the cost of microphones and the cell phone companies giving all the bandwidth. I mean, the FCC giving all the bandwidth to the cell phone companies, and how that translated into microphone cost and things like that.
Wireless microphones, with the bands being cut by the cell phone companies. You're on a tighter band. The manufacturer knows this, and they're going to use it to their advantage to try to get more product out. They know you're limited as to what you can get. They're going to build it in that bandwidth, which being governed by the FCC. And it ran cost up to buy the equipment. Things the labor costs went up. I mean, there's a lot of, as you know, there's a lot of hidden costs in business that nobody ever realizes. And fuel, insurance, everything just has creeped up.
Oh, absolutely.
And it has gotten harder, still enjoyable, but it has gotten harder, I guess, since COVID even, to stay on top of things.
Well, in your business, and I don't know if this kind of falls under your stuff. I'm sure it does at some point, but in your business, you're fighting fuel. You're fighting labor. You're fighting the cost of the actual equipment. But also, Georgia is one of the most litigated states in the world, in the country right now. Right. I think they're trying to roll back a lot of that stuff and make it, a little bit fairer or whatever. But I mean, your insurance cost has got to be ridiculous,
astronomical when you're flying equipment over people's heads.
Right.
It's astronomical. It's kind of odd that you bring that up. That's one of the questions every year. How high do you go with equipment? Well, a couple of the buildings that we work in have got 80 and 90-foot ceilings. Mm-hmm. So they rate your premium on how high you go.
Wow.
If you're at 70 foot and you cap there and you tell them 70 foot, you've got one price. Well, if you go work at 90 and something happens, they're going to say,
it's not covered.
Not covered, sir. You told us 70 foot was your maximum height.
Yep.
And, they're looking at the exposure that they've got involved as far as insuring you as they're insured. There's several thousand pounds of equipment hanging over somebody's head, and they've got to make sure that it's right, that it's installed safely, and that there are no issues with that.
And there's so many things that go on at these festivals, and just different. And God forbid something like it happens, but something like what Aldine happened. What went down in Vegas, a shooting, something like that. I'm sure they there were lawsuits against the promoters. They were lawsuits against the hotel. They're all the way down to the man that brought the stage out there. I guarantee you, he gets named in all these wild lawsuits too. You know what I'm saying?
I'll tell you a quick story. We had a Kirk Franklin concert at the Macon Coliseum 25 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I did the sound and lights. The Coliseum owned their own stage.
Mm-hmm.
We cut the lights off to focus the house lights off to focus the stage lights for the show.
Right.
The stage handrails had not been put on yet because they were still sound checking. One guy goes off of the back of the stage, breaks his arm. The attorney calls and says, hey, we've got you, we've got the promoter. We can't sue the city, but we've got Coca-Cola because they were serving beverages at the event.
Yep.
We've got the stage manufacturer. We've got about 7 people that we're pushing this lawsuit on. And I was stunned.
Right.
Sir, I just did the lights and the sound.
Yeah.
But that was for that show that he fell off of the stage, right?
Right. And if he'd have broke his leg in his yard, it would have been a
Sir, that's not even
break.
my stage.
Right.
But you did the sound and lights, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, the day before we were supposed to be served, the promoter's insurance company came in and honored the demands of the attorney at the time. But
right.
Funny you would bring that up because that did happen, and all that stuff all that stuff falls in line with the cost for us to produce a show.
Absolutely.
You know, there's all those hidden costs from the standpoint of insurance, labor. You know, it takes a unique individual to want to be up at 2 o'clock in the morning slinging 100-pound decks back in a truck, and going home and getting 3 hours sleep and popping back up to go do it again.
Absolutely. That guy does not work cheap.
They don't work cheap. They don't work cheap.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's just a lot of, costs like that are, people don't take into consideration when they go into a business, and a lot of times, even in my business, they, waste, any kind of waste influences, the price that is passed along to my customer.
Correct.
If we spot a scammer trying to scam us out of free food, that's affecting all of my customers, and all the way down to insurance and stuff like that too. Our insurance is absolutely crazy as well. So, there's a lot of things that people just don't think about when they're paying for a product. That's just
I think that one of the coolest business ventures related to the concert industry was when we had Billy Ray Cyrus in Perry. Mm-hmm. And there's a guy out front selling roses for all the ladies. There's $5 to buy a rose to throw on stage to Billy Ray Cyrus. And I didn't think anything about it. The show's over. There's 300-400 roses scattered all over the stage. Here comes this guy with one of these rolling trash bins. What are you doing? He said, I'm picking up the roses. So what are you doing? He said, I'm going to sell them in the next city.
Sell them tomorrow in Chicago.
I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I buy them from China for 50 cents a piece because I buy them 5,000 at a time.
Oh, yeah.
I got to put a 2-cent battery in it in the next city we get to.
Right.
And I just keep rolling. So there he is collecting all those roses that light up when you hit the little switch at the bottom because it's got a single AAA battery in it. And I said, had I not already gotten as deep as I had been, I was reconsidering. I might have went in the rose business at concerts because that was the most unique thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Zero cost in it. Low cost.
Well, you got your upfront dollar and 2 cents for a battery, but then your ROI got really good after that second sale.
That's right. Absolutely.
Well, it's been a fun career for you.
It's been really fun. It's been thinking about one other thing, the chili cook-offs. Mm-hmm. Boy, we enjoyed those chili cook-offs, doing production for that, which Laura was heavily involved. Several great artists there that we got to work with. Tanya Tucker.
Yeah.
I can remember coming out there. What's the guy that died? Country artist. He was from Georgia. Too Much Fun. What's that mean?
Oh, Daryl Singletary.
Daryl Singletary.
Yeah, I came out there to the Daryl
great
Singletary
guy he
play.
was.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
But he's got a funny Tanya Tucker story.
I was not only the sound and roof provider that day, but I was also the transportation specialist from the bus up at the top of the hill down to the stage for Tanya, and so we got her from the bus, took her down, and I guess her and the lead guitar player or boyfriend and girlfriend, and they've had this big old fight. So he ends up on a Greyhound bus going back to Nashville, and Tanya does her show, and we get Tanya back in the car or in the truck, and I drive her back up to her bus, and she said, "Come on inside. Me and Annie are in here," and went up inside with her. She said, "You got my check?" And I'm like, "Hang on just a minute." And I call Beth.
Yeah.
I think I called Beth Evans, who used to be at the station. I said, "Beth, Tanya's asking about her check. She says she wants to stop at Phipps Plaza in Atlanta and go shopping on the way home." And of course, corporate had worked all that stuff out, to pay her wire transfer and all that. But that was a really unique experience with Tanya Tucker at the chili cook-off.
Wow. That was over at Shriner Park, right?
Shriners Park. Actually, we started at
Vincent
Valley.
Okay.
And we have Bill Monroe coming in one year, and he gets in trouble with the Bible and the girlfriend. You remember that?
Oh boy.
Vaguely.
They wouldn't let him leave Nashville because they had a disagreement, and the Bible got involved. So we had Jim and Jesse and Ralph Stanley. Came in and played that show at Vincent Valley.
Awesome.
That was a unique experience because there again, I'm growing,
right,
and never really had heard of Vincent Valley, but we get out there and the station had a corporate trade with somebody to get us a nice stage built out there. And we did that for how many years? 3 or 4,
3 or
5
4 years.
Yeah. Really good environment out there, big pond out there. Everybody around in Middle Georgia, I'm sure, knows about Vincent Valley, but that was a really good stepping stone.
Where was it at again now? So Vincent Valley, it was where was it located, or is it around still?
It's on
It's
Industrial Boulevard.
yeah.
Go out Industrial Boulevard.
Back behind Smiley's and all that in
I thought you told me that you guys tried to buy that park one day, one time.
Not Vincent Valley.
Who told me that?
But it's out. You go out Industrial Boulevard. It's out there on your left. There's some cabins and a pond and that kind of stuff. Before you get into Byron.
I got you.
Yeah, really, really nice. It's a summer camp for churches, I believe.
I know who that was. Tony Evans tried to buy that, I believe. Tony Evans and
Okay, I
Mr.
knew
Ronnie Henson.
Yeah.
Somebody tried to buy it. Yeah.
Yep. It was a church camp. Yeah. I think they were on the verge, or maybe even they might have owned it for a little while.
Yeah. But back then there was an elderly couple, remember, that had the trailer right there on the spot, and they were all excited to have so much action going on. We had lots of good Darren Norwood.
Ricky Skaggs played out there.
Good Dog, Bad Bone. Ricky Skaggs, Doug Supernaw.
Yeah.
We had some good ones out there back in the day.
Good times.
Yeah. Oh, and another nice one, you were asking me earlier. I'm going to tell you another nice guy.
Right.
One of the nicest fellas that I ever met. Probably top of the list. Vern Godston.
Yeah.
Vern came into a Penny Pitch concert, and he was a country fella. I mean, he came out to the soundboard, and he said, "Son, there's one thing you got to concentrate on." I said, "What's that, sir?" He said, "Get my voice out there. You can make it louder in the band, but get my voice out there."
There you go.
That's what people are here
They
to
called
see.
Vern the Voice.
That was
His nickname
yeah, that
was
his
the
nickname.
Voice.
You got to bring it if your nickname's The Voice.
Well, and he could. Yeah, he was a great one of the country artists back in the day.
He was. He actually drove him in my daddy's old van from the venue back to his hotel after sound check. And him and his guys were at some hotel on Riverside Drive.
Best Western.
And they were out there in the Best Western parking lot, picking and grinning,
That's right.
just hanging out.
We talk a lot on the podcast about doing good things. And, of course, just being in the business that you're in, you have participated in thousands of things that are like, charity concerts and stuff like that. But do you have something that sticks out in your mind that this was one of the coolest things I was able to do as far as raising money for a good cause or anything? Does something stick out in your
I
mind
probably
about
got to go all the way back to that flood relief concert, because we were pretty devastated in the Southeast, is the best I remember with that.
Right.
And they got in touch with Tricia, who donated her time, as Laura said, and Kenny. And that probably was really heart-filling to be able to be involved in that and know that there was a lot of money raised that went to a lot of people that got a lot of help out of that.
Right.
That probably would be one of the largest that I've been involved in, and glad that I was.
Yeah, those were some tough times. I mean, I was 8 years old, and I can remember my grandparents living, over on the side of town near, where your office and all that stuff is off of Houston Road. And, I mean, they were coming to Jones County to get water for months, I think.
Yes.
I mean, just big 55-gallon drums of water. And, I mean, it was just tough times, and people just don't realize how fortunate we are that we have not had something
like that
crazy
Like that
happen.
again.
I was a subcontractor for the Crown Plaza, and that was another stepping stone on the corporate side. I owned the TV VCRs, the slide projectors, and screens and microphones for business meetings.
Okay.
So when the flood hit, there were no meetings. There were no meetings. But I can remember, thank the Lord, because of my relationship with the property, they gave myself and my granddaddy a hotel room to stay in for the month.
Wow.
And they brought the big tanker trucks from Juliet, and they would pump the water in the hotel water system.
Wow.
We only had 6 rooms available, 6 floors available, because that's as high as the water would pump at the time.
Wow.
But we stayed there, and they had those trucks running 24/7. One would be almost empty. There'd be another one. There was a trucking company that was just making the loop from Juliet to the Crown Plaza,
Right.
back and forth.
Yeah, and I guess, I'm 38 years old, so unless you're in your mid 30s, you don't remember that at all.
Right.
That's history, but man, that was you look at some old pictures, I mean, people going down Riverside Drive on boats and
On Riverside Drive, restaurants were 3/4 of the way filled with water.
yeah.
That's correct.
You
Yep.
could see the water line.
Yep.
The old Locos building, which
Yep.
was the Texas whatever it was, cattle
Yep.
company and all
Yep.
that stuff. There's a lot of pictures of it floating around that, I mean, it was 4, 5, 6 foot in there. The water was.
That was one of my main. That was one of my main places getting going. That I would go eat lunch and dinner every day. And I remember I was coming back from Columbus doing a show when that flood hit, and we got halfway back, and somewhere in Butler a bridge had got out, so they ran us around. But I can remember one of the first things seeing that Riverside with all the restaurants, and of course this place that I called a second home to be able to eat.
Right.
Just covered.
Wow.
Just covered in water and people riding around on boats looking at it. It was pretty devastating.
Absolutely.
But you've done a lot of you're not telling us a lot you've done, because I know you've donated a lot of time and energy and resources and money to different things, and that's okay. You don't have to toot your own horn, but I'll just tell everybody that I know you've done a lot of good stuff for people.
I've always tried to help any way I could, anybody I could that I felt like needed the help. I'm a drill sergeant at the shop
Right.
and on a job site, but I also have tried to bring people on to make their life a little bit better.
Right. Well, that's why you're blessed. And,
Right.
And you stay blessed. And everybody that knows you knows that I'm sure behind the scenes you have made some things happen where things wasn't quite going to happen.
Right.
But you made it happen. And it was because it was for a good cause and you made it happen. And
Can you?
there's probably numerous, countless.
He
of those
does a lot of good
situations.
things for people. I mean, it's a funny story to me. It may not be to you, and maybe you don't want to tell it, but I mean, you've actually bought your employees some teeth.
Oh, man. I bought a
you
lot
tell
of
that
things
one?
for people, but I have never bought them some teeth.
I've
Not
bought-
yet.
Can
anyway.
you tell that one?
Yeah, yeah.
Listen to this, Justin.
We had a guy that was with us that had some substance abuse issues in the prior years, and he was kind of in front with my clients, and I said, we need to probably get you some teeth if it'd be okay.
Right.
And he said, well, I had never really thought about it, but that sounds good. So we got him a set of dentures, and lo and behold, 3 months later, we go up to Cincinnati, Ohio for a show, and my client calls and says, hey, you guys, did you have some oral surgery or something? He doesn't have any teeth. And I said, hang on just a minute. I'll call you right back. And I called my guy.
Right.
Where's your teeth? He said, I left them on the nightstand at the house. I had to leave the house so early. And I said, well, you better get your wife to get those teeth and get them down to my office,
Right.
because I'm fixing to FedEx these teeth to you.
Right.
So sure enough, Rhonda gets them in a box, and we FedEx them up to Cincinnati, Ohio, and he puts his teeth in. So when I fly up the next morning, boy, he's grinning ear to ear because he's got them teeth in. And the only negative caveat to that is he came back, and I took the $17 out of his check to
Right.
FedEx his teeth.
There you go.
And it made him so mad he quit.
Oh,
But that's a true story.
Well, and the thing is that is the kind of thing that Buddy would do, just, I'm going to get you some teeth. You didn't make him pay for the teeth. You wanted to make his life better, and you got him some teeth. He just does stuff like that for people.
Yeah.
yeah.
Justin does stuff like that.
Done a couple of sets of hearing aids.
Oh, I can believe it.
And I can tell you, I don't have hearing aids, but I can tell you, don't take a $2,000 set of hearing aids and put them on your nightstand.
Oh,
Because little did I know until I found out, in-house pets are attracted to the scent of the earwax.
oh boy.
So within a matter of seconds,
They're gone.
the first set of hearing aids I bought
Gone.
for an employee, the next morning came in, there was a piece of plastic about the end of
Oh,
the big
no.
pin.
Oh, no.
What happened? So, of course, the dog got to the hearing aids and ate them.
Wow.
So the next pair was a CVS special for $29.95.
There you go.
But yeah, I've always felt like I've been blessed because I have tried to help other people, and in some kind of a way, it feels like it comes back.
It does.
Whether it's a vehicle to put me in a position to continue to help people.
Mm-hmm.
It's just always been a blessing to be able to do something you love and be able to share it.
Yep. And it's addictive. It's addictive to be able to do something.
And I have that type of personality that I want you to be a better person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not perfect by any means. I have just as many faults as the other person.
Right.
But if I can help you anyway,
Yep.
step up.
And sometimes you feel like you want them to be a better person more than they want to be a better person.
Not sometimes. most of the time.
I completely know the feeling.
Yeah. and it's a challenge.
Right.
It is a challenge that you're trying to,
Absolutely.
by the blessings that God has given me, it's a vehicle to be able to help other people, under the radar. And I've been like that from day one, even almost when I didn't have it to give. I was still, trying to help
sure.
out. So,
well, in this business, this is something else we ask everybody in the podcast. We talk to a lot of people that get to meet a lot of people that people don't know, a lot of people that people do know. You've met probably more famous people than the top 1% in the world. Have you ever been kind of shell-shocked or, where you just stunned, star-stunned, I guess? Have you ever been starstruck?
Well, I got to tell you, not so much in the musical industry, but meeting George Bush Sr. as president.
Okay. I got you.
I wasn't super political, but, of course,
Right.
you'd seen it on the TV. That was pretty unique.
If I were running their campaigns and they were renting my speakers, I'd be whoever. Let's go, baby.
I tell you, we
on
did
to the next.
we also in '92 did a lot with Bill Clinton,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and we were doing a Clinton rally in Albany, and we had just done his opponent in Jonesboro.
Oh yeah.
And I remember a reporter asking me, What's your thoughts on this? And I just Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I just said, listen, all the money's green.
Money's green. It ain't red or blue, baby. It's green.
So that really happened.
Right. You're not a political commentator. You are a man that handles business.
There you go.
Right.
That's it.
Buddy Lovell Audio Visual Services. So if you need a concert set up or a microphone, he's the man to handle it.
Absolutely. And Mr. Buddy, I appreciate it. And
Yes, sir.
I know we've been talking about coming and doing this for probably 6 months with us, but we finally got you out here to Gray in my backyard, and I appreciate you taking that long ride out here to Jones County to see us.
Yeah, I tell you, this is a great thing y'all got going.
Hey, we're enjoying it, and we've got a lot of cool guests coming up on this series, this season of it. So.
Yep.
And what we always like to remind everybody is if you can do something good, you should do something good. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, guys.
No rules when you come out my way. That's why my field stays packed on Fridays. We hunting, fishing, good living, just soaking up every country second we're giving. Yeah, we a long way away from the highway, so go ahead, y'all, you can get sideways. Smoking, sipping, dip spitting, just soaking